Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into an investigation sourced from Mike Winger, and it's all about the acclaimed prophetic figure, Shawn Bolz. It's a really complex story. We're talking about alleged fraud, abuse, and a culture of cover-up inside the charismatic church. And it all kicks off with a man who, to thousands of people, looked like he was performing actual miracles right in front of them.
So, let's start with what made Shawn Bolz a total phenomenon. It was these things called words of knowledge. Picture this. You're in a massive auditorium, and he calls you out by name, and then starts revealing these stunningly specific details about your life. Things like your mom's name, her birthday, maybe even your street address. Things a total stranger could never, ever know. And for believers, this was it. This was undeniable proof that God was speaking directly through him.
But the source material for this explainer, it asks a really central question. Was this actually divine revelation? Or was it something a lot more down to earth? The investigation we're about to unpack alleges that this was all a very carefully crafted illusion built on a very, very modern foundation.
Okay, so to really understand the fallout here, we first have to get a handle on the man at the center of it all. See, Shawn Bolz wasn't just some other speaker on the circuit. To a lot of people, he was the future of the entire prophetic movement.
The source traces his rise through these really key connections and this totally unique prophetic style that just captivated audiences. But his big break, that came in 2016. He was given the stage at Bethel Church in Redding, California, which is, without a doubt, one of the most influential charismatic churches in the entire world. And this wasn't just an invitation to speak. It was a huge endorsement that basically launched him into the stratosphere.
Yeah, that introduction from Bill Johnson, Bethel's senior leader, that was absolutely critical. I mean, Johnson is one of the most respected and trusted figures in that world. So when he stands up and calls Bolz a dearest and most trusted friend, he's basically vouching for the guy's character, for his gift. The thousands of people in that room and the millions watching online, they trusted Johnson. And because of that, they trusted Bolz. Simple as that.
Okay, so this is where the investigation starts to methodically deconstruct Bolz's whole process. The main claim is that this incredible prophetic gift, it wasn't divine revelation at all. It was actually just sophisticated data mining. And the craziest part, the evidence was basically hiding in plain sight.
You know, the timing here is pretty fascinating. Bolz himself actually said he got a prophetic upgrade right around 2013. He said he could suddenly get these hyper-specific details, birthdays, anniversaries, you name it. But the source points out this huge coincidence. 2013 just so happens to be the same year Facebook launched its super powerful graph search feature. That feature made it incredibly easy to find exactly this kind of public info. So the investigation asks, was it a divine upgrade or a technological one?
All right, a really pivotal moment in the investigation comes from this one prophecy to Kelly Rhodes. Yep, the same one we heard at the very beginning. So after he nails her mom's name and birthday, he tries to name a street address.
I saw a friend of mine, her name's Kelly, and I saw her standing on a road. Does that mean something like it's maybe a last name, Kelly Rhodes? Is that you? Kelly Rhodes? That's awesome. Hi, Kelly Rhodes. I feel like, Kelly, you're like one of those people, those hidden figures that, like, there's something so special about you, but you've been hidden in it. And how you've been, like, a good daughter to Doris. And how she's like your best friend. And I feel like God's just saying that January 27th, that's her birthday. Did she or you ever live on a 105 like Slaughterhouse or 105 something? Or does that make sense?
Kelly's mother, Doris, is from Pennsylvania, according to her Facebook profile. There is, in fact, another Doris Rhodes who lives in Pennsylvania, and she is the Doris who had the address, 105 Slaughterhouse Drive.
But he gets it wrong, and you can almost hear him sense the mistake because then he says something really telling. He encourages her to research that a little bit.
And you know what? The investigators did just that. They did the research, and what they found, according to the source, was the quote-unquote smoking gun, a single mistake that seemed to unravel the entire illusion.
And this just perfectly illustrates the core allegation. When the researchers looked into it, guess what? There was a Doris Rhodes who lived at 105 Slaughterhouse Road in that same area. It just wasn't Kelly Rhodes' mom. The allegation is that Bolz, in a rushed internet search, got the two women mixed up. So instead of revealing a message from God, he accidentally revealed his human method. The investigation found all these other patterns that seemed to back this theory up. Bolz would literally call out social media usernames from the stage, like Terry Bishop 911.
He'd mispronounce names in ways that really suggest he was reading them, not hearing them, like famously calling one woman Babs Ulrich, which was just a mashup of her nickname Babs and a misspelling of her last name. The source claims that again and again, every single specific detail could be traced right back to public social media profile.
So you might be thinking, okay, it's a clever trick, but what's the big deal? Well, the source argues this was so much more than a harmless parlor trick. The investigation uncovered the devastating human cost for people who believed these words were direct commands from God.
One of the most powerful testimonies comes from a woman named Jubilee Dawn. At the time, she was a student at Bethel's own School of Supernatural Ministry. She'd only been dating her boyfriend for about a month when Shawn Bolz calls him out at a conference, points to Jubilee, and declares, "God's giving you this girl."
So, believing this was an undeniable directive straight from God, Jubilee married the man. The relationship almost immediately became abusive. She ended up enduring 4 years of horrific physical, spiritual, and mental abuse. Her husband even strangled her twice. She felt completely spiritually trapped because she believed that if she left the marriage, she'd be disobeying God's explicit will, as declared by his trusted prophet.
And this highlights a really crucial point. This wasn't just about one man's actions. As another person impacted by all this said, she was primed to believe it. The source argues that the entire culture of unquestioning faith, promoted by the very same leaders who endorsed Bolz, created an environment where his words carried the weight of divine commands, and that had devastating consequences. From here, the investigation widens its scope, alleging that all this harm was made even worse by a failure of leadership. The source claims that key figures, especially at Bethel Church, knew about Bolz's fraudulent methods and other serious misconduct for years, but they completely failed to warn the public.
According to the source, this timeline shows that leaders were allegedly aware of serious problems long before they took any public action. Evidence of the data mining was reportedly sent to Bethel as far back as 2016. By 2020, even more serious allegations, including sexual harassment, were brought right to them. And yet, the public endorsements just kept coming. This right here, this is the central tension the source highlights. Privately, in 2021, Bethel's #2 leader, Chris Valentin, is texting a victim that Bolz is effectively banned and that he's told other leaders about Bolz's dishonest prophetic ministry. But publicly? 2 years later, in 2023, Bethel's senior leader, Bill Johnson, is on national television calling Bolz's life the image of a perfect relationship with the Lord. The gap between what they knew in private and what they said in public is just massive.
The source brings even more evidence that suggests this was kind of an open secret among the movement's elite. This is a secretly recorded piece of audio from 2022, and it captures another prominent prophetess, Stacey Campbell, stating with no ambiguity that Bolz is a deceiver and he's dangerous.
We're in that era where I think it's going to start, but there's always a burnt earth prior to. And so, So on Monday, August 22nd, I reached out to Chris because I know, so Shawn Bolz, who traveled with Shawn Bolz, told these gross stories of sexual immorality of Shawn Bolz. And that when he traveled with Shawn Bolz would masturbate in front of him. It made him very uncomfortable. And walk naked in front of him. Not wear clothes, and he's a guy. And so finally he couldn't take it, and he went and told other leaders because he didn't know what to do. Patricia reached out and tried to talk to Shawn. Shawn would not talk to her. So she talked to Che, and Che said, because Shawn said, I'm under Che's leadership. So don't talk to Chris because they were having him in regularly. And Shawn said to Chris and Bill, I'm not under Bethel, I'm under Che. And Che tried to talk to him and it didn't go. So I said on Monday, August 22nd, so this was over a year ago, I've known this, maybe 2. And I said, has there been, and so Chris Valentin flew. So I know this from Chris's direct mouth. He said, I flew to Shawn Bolz. On my own dime, and I spent the entire day saying Shawn. Then Shawn denied everything and basically tried to make the other guy a liar. But the other guy was so broken. And to have a Christian leader masturbating in the same room as you and walking naked, that is while you're in the room with him. So on August 22nd, I reached out to Chris and said, has there been any restoration with Shawn Bolz? Because Chris, their great desire is always to restore a fallen minister. And it's part of the ministry of Shiloh that when they fall, and Shawn was directly under Paul Cain, who also was accused of homosexual acts. And the healing rooms took him in and put somebody on him day and night so that he could not sin again. Because once a person has been abused by a person in authority that they look up to, they're devastated for the rest of their life. Like it is like a parent. A terror. And so Chris' response, you can read this from Chris. This is just the text. I will then send you the email. Hi, Chris, has there been any restoration with Shawn Bolz? He says, definitely not Shawn. I said, okay, thank you so much. I appreciate you responding because I know that Shawn is now being asked by Georgian, etc. But Chris said, Shawn will never come to Bethel again because of his lack of humility and repentance.
And in that recording, she confirms that other top leaders knew all about his alleged sexual misconduct and his fraudulent methods. And yet, when the allegations finally became too public to just ignore, Bethel's official 2024 statement took a much, much softer stance. Despite all the certainty that was expressed in private, the public position was suddenly one of ambiguity, claiming that without a confession, only he and the Lord really know what took place. The source argues this is a classic example of institutional self-preservation, protecting the organization at the expense of the victim. So, we've distilled the core claims of a really complex and honestly disturbing investigation. It details these allegations of a prophet using technology to fake miracles, the very real-world harm that caused, and an institutional leadership that allegedly knew the truth but chose silence over protecting its own followers. It leaves all of us with a final, provocative thought. When the very systems we trust to grant spiritual authority fail to hold that authority accountable, who is it that ultimately pays the price?